So, my little angels, let us read the story called The Miracle of the Potato Latkes. It is a wonderful story, and I know we have read it many times. I love it. Every year at Hanukkah time, Tante Golda would reach into her wooden barrel and pick out 8 of the biggest potatoes she could find. She would peel them and grate them and fry them into the most delicious potato latkes in all of Russia. Her friends and neighbors would crowd into Tante Golda's little kitchen just to taste her famous latkes. Tante Golda was never happier than when she stood in front of her black iron stove and cooked batch after batch of golden crispy latkes and served them to her guests. "Tante Golda," her guests would say, "these are the most delicious latkes in all of Russia, but you should have saved the potatoes for yourself. There's still a long, cold winter ahead." "Don't worry about me," Tante Golda would smile and say, "God will provide." And God did provide. Somehow, Tante Golda's friends and neighbors always managed to drop off a few potatoes now and then, so there was always enough to last her through the winter. But one year, because of severe drought, very few potatoes were harvested. And when Hanukkah came around and Tante Golda reached into her wooden barrel, she found only one tiny potato. "Oh, this is terrible," Tante Golda exclaimed. "Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah, the night I invite all my friends and neighbors over for potato latkes, and I'm down to my last potato." So she ran next door to her neighbor Reisel to see if she had any extra potatoes. "I'm sorry, Tante Golda, I don't even have a one," Reisel said. So Tante Golda ran down the road to her friend Geitel, but Geitel didn't have any either. Finally, Tante Golda ran across town to her cousin Hodel, but even Hodel's barrel was empty. Tante Golda held up her one tiny potato. "I ask you, Hodel, how can I make Hanukkah party with one tiny potato?" "You can't," Hodel said, "unless you're a magician." "A magician I am not," Tante Golda sighed. "Well, then it will have to be a Hanukkah party without the potato latkes," Hodel said. Hodel's husband, Moshe, looked up from his reading. "A Hanukkah party without Tante Golda's potato latkes? No one will feel like celebrating." "I guess you're right," Tante Golda reluctantly agreed. "There can't be a Hanukkah party without potato latkes." And so sadly, Tante Golda trudged home. For the first time that she could remember, there would be no Hanukkah party, no guests filling her house, no golden crispy latkes. But as she lit the first Hanukkah candle, she remembered the ancient miracle of the oil that lasted for 8 days, and her face brightened. "God will always provide it," she assured herself. "Maybe God will provide a miracle now." And just then there was a knock on the door. An old beggar was standing there, tired and hungry. "Is this the miracle?" she asked herself. A beggar wanting food when I hardly have enough for myself? Uh, but of course, she took pity on the old beggar. I was about to make a potato latke or two, she told him. Won't you come in and join me? Naturally, the beggar accepted. He entered Tante Golda's small kitchen and bowed. Blessings on you, dear lady. I thought tonight I would surely go hungry, but as I always said, God will provide. Oh, you say that too? Tante Golda asked him. Well, then it must be true. Tonight he's provided me with a guest. Tante Golda began peeling and grating her one small potato. She added quite a bit of flour and egg to stretch the batter, and soon she was frying up a batch of her golden crispy latkes. The beggar ate. He ate the latkes with great relish. These are the best potato latkes in all of Russia, he told her. Do you really like them? Tante Golda asked, pouring him a glass of tea from the samovar. I like them, the beggar repeated. Oh, they're delicious. And believe me, it's not just because I'm starving. These latkes nourish the body and soul. They are a miracle, and one miracle leads to another. You'll see. And when he finished his tea, the beggar thanked her again and said, God will surely bless you for sharing your latkes with an old beggar. And after the beggar left, Tante Golda took off her apron, climbed up the stairs to her sleeping loft above the stove. She was tired, but happy, almost as happy as if she had made a Hanukkah party for all of her friends and neighbors. And that night, Tante Golda dreamed about latkes, dozens and dozens of them, rising off of her griddle, floating out of the door and rolling down the road to the village and into the homes of all of her friends and neighbors. When she woke up the next morning, she sighed because her lovely vision had only been a dream after all. She knew there were no potatoes left to make latkes. But when she got out of bed, she noticed there were 2 potatoes sitting next to the menorah. Oh, Raisel must have found some extra potatoes after all, she thought to herself, and that night she invited Raisel over for a batch of her delicious latkes. The following day, which was the 3rd day of Hanukkah, Tante Golda woke up and saw 3 potatoes sitting next to the menorah. Oh, the Geidel is always trying to fool me, she told herself. She was just pretending she didn't have any potatoes. And so it went. Each day Tante Golda woke up, there was 1 more potato sitting next to the menorah. And each night she invited 1 more guest over for latkes. And finally, on the last day of Hanukkah, there were 8 potatoes sitting next to the menorah. And that evening, it was just like it had always been. 8 candles and 8 potatoes and 8 guests. Whew. Tante Golda stood in front of her black iron stove and cooked batch after batch of her famous latkes. These are the most delicious potato latkes in all of Russia, Rizel said. Not only are they the most delicious latkes, Geidel said, they're probably the only latkes in all of Russia. Tell us, Tante Golda, Hodel asked, where did you get the potatoes? Moshe winked slyly. She must have friends with the Tsar. Oh, the Tsar, poor man, he has never had a good fortune to taste Tante Golda's latkes, Hodel said. And everyone laughed and helped themselves to another latke. And after they were finished eating, Tante Golda turned to her guests and said, I know this has been a hard winter for us all, with very few potatoes to go around, and I want to thank you for sharing your few potatoes with me. But Tante Golda, her guest said, much as we want to do, we won't be able to help you with the potatoes. We have none ourselves. Tante Golda was surprised, but not too surprised. She remembered the beggar's blessing and knew that somehow, as always, God had provided. And when Tante Golda woke up the next morning, she felt sad. She had always did, when Hanukkah was over. Perhaps she was even sadder than usual because now there were no potatoes sitting next to the menorah. But as Tante Golda got out of bed, she blinked and cried, "Oh, it's a miracle!" And there in the corner was a wooden barrel filled to the very top with potatoes. She ran over to the barrel, scooped some potatoes into her hands to make sure she wasn't dreaming, and this time she didn't even try to guess where the potatoes came from. She simply thanked God for providing them. A barrel full of gold couldn't have made Tante Gold any happier. Now she had potatoes to last until spring, with enough left over to share with her friends and neighbors and cook into batch after batch of golden crispy latkes. And that year, Tante Golda's Hanukkah lasted all winter long. And that is the end. So if you want to listen to this again, feel free. I love you so, so much.